Welcome to RealGM Radio. Before we jump in, do me a favor and subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel to catch the podcast when we record live, tune into the best segments, and join the RealGM Radio community. It helps me, it helps you, it's a win-win. Find us on youtube.com/@RealGMRadio. Welcome to RealGM Radio. I'm Wes Goldberg, and today I am joined by Adam Mares of DNVR Sports and the All-NBA podcast to talk about Anthony Edwards' ascension, the Lakers offseason, Giannis trade ideas, and his expert insights on the Nuggets. All right, let's jump right in because we have a lot to get to. Adam Mares is here, one of my favorite guys to talk hoops with. We're recording this, Adam, after the Timberwolves eliminated the Lakers. I thought it was a really interesting Anthony Edwards game because he didn't score a ton, but I thought he was an expert playmaker in this series, which is not something that I was expecting going into the series. It's why I picked the Lakers. I thought every close game would have favored the Lakers because they have LeBron and they have Luka making decisions for their team. And Anthony Edwards, if there's sort of a negative to his game, it doesn't always make the best decisions with the ball in his hands. That was not the case in this series, and especially not in that final game. 8 assists and 0 turnovers in the elimination game. He ends up with 31 assists and 6 turnovers in this series. Did he just take a leap? Another leap?
I think so. I think he did. And if you ask him, he credits it to watching Luka Doncic, which is kind of ironic a little bit. But I think there's no question that he has taken a big leap. It's funny because these guys that come in so young, they feel like they should be older than they are. He's 23 years old. He's still adding to his understanding of the game. And I think this was a huge step forward for him in the playoffs where he was the point of emphasis, reading it and getting the ball out of his hands. And what was the stat? You just said 6 turnovers stood out, but what was the assists?
31 assists to 6 turnovers.
So 31 assists is a little low for a 5-game series, given the way they were defending him. But I don't mind it because the 6 turnovers is more important. He either made good decisions or safe decisions, I thought, throughout this series. And the other number that stands out to me about this one is they outscored the Lakers, they being the Timberwolves, by 42 points in the fourth quarter. You were right to be skeptical about their fourth quarter clutch time and how they operate. But I thought they did a great job in this series in those moments, and especially in this last game where they shut the door on the Lakers.
Yeah, and I would bet if you added like the hockey assists to Anthony Edwards' total, it would be a lot higher because even in that last game, they're doubling him off ball screens in the first half before they make a little. Lakers made a couple of adjustments in the second half, but they're doubling him off those ball screens in the first half, and he's just making that right pass right into the middle of the floor to Gobert or McDaniels or whoever, Julius Randle, and then that player is spraying out to the shooter. And so it's not even about the stats for Edwards. I just thought his floor game was so good. So I don't know. This guy, I've said it before, Anthony Edwards has a case to just be the most talented player in the league. And it doesn't mean he's the best player in the league, but when I think about talent, I know it's hard to define, but it's like the capacity to get better. What is your ultimate ceiling? And I'm glad you brought up the Luka thing because they're like, oh, you've gotten better at, some reporter asked him a couple weeks ago, you got better at handling the double teams. What did you do? Oh, I just watched Luka. Adam, do you remember before the year or during the year, he was asked, hey, your three-point shot is way better all of a sudden. What did you do? And he was like, oh, I just watched Damian Lillard shoot.
Yeah.
And I just took his jumper. And I'm like, are we just going to pretend that that's normal? Because I don't know another player who's like, yep, just grab that off of, like, literally just like a superhero power. It's just like, yeah, I want this. I have it now. I want this. I have it now. That capacity to learn and to get better and to do it, I don't know, seemingly overnight, that's wild to me.
I think on the playmaking front, he still has a long way to go.
Yes.
But we see great scorers who just become merely good at handling double teams. And there's sometimes big-time players. I put Kevin Durant in this category. He's for Kawhi Leonard in this category for as great as they are.
Just thinking of those guys.
If you trap them, they're good at getting the ball out of their hands. Not necessarily creating extra advantages, but they're good at it. And I think that Anthony Edwards is good at that now. He was bad. Now he's good at it. Will he become great? That's where you become unassailable. Now it's like, okay, we can win. We can solve any problem, even with role players behind, not necessarily second stars. And so I think that's an important leap. And he's 23 years old. So and the trajectory is like, yes, what's he going to be like next year? I think in the coming series, that'll continue to be tested, his ability to kind of bend the defense, especially if they make it to the conference finals and face likely Oklahoma City, but maybe, the Clippers or Denver. That will be tested even more. But he's made such a big stride there. And the thing, I like your point about the talent. I wouldn't. Talent is so hard because basketball talents, there's like shooting, dribbling, like those are obvious ones. But there's a million micro talents that I think we just kind of throw by the wayside. But what he does that was also impressive in the series, and he does it all the time, including last year in the playoffs, he also guards the best player oftentimes, or one of the best players. And the ability and the gifts to be able to give that effort and energy on the defensive end and then run your team's offense on the other end, there's not many guys that can take on that workload the way that he did in the series. And the fact that he did it without seeming flustered or tired or any of that, it's scary.
The Timberwolves have gotten better. I thought the first couple months of the season, it was really rough coming off of the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. Julius Randle just did not fit. Randle had a great series. Yep. Gobert exercised a lot of demons in that last game. And some of it was, I guess, forced errors by the Lakers, just not playing a center and some questionable decisions by JJ Redick there. But, he did what he did, and you got to give him credit. Credit where it's due. But you've seen this Timberwolves a lot, this team a lot. Maybe not this particular team, but you've seen like these editions of it. Are you buying Minnesota as a team that can Western Conference Finals, potentially NBA Finals?
I think NBA Finals, to me is very realistic for them because they have an identity that works and they know how to execute that identity. And Julius Randle, I'm glad you shouted him out because to me, players are always viewed as like good or bad. This guy's good, that guy's bad. Randle is obviously very good at some things and not so good at others. And I think that he deserves the credit for adjusting his game. He comes to this new team. He's going to get the ball off of these traps and he's going to get an opportunity to attack. But he's not, I thought in the series, he didn't like settle for his attacks. Like, oh, I get the ball. Now I get to do, my thing and he was a good facilitator. He was a good scorer. He was a good punisher whenever he got the mismatches. So I thought that he really leaned into what his strengths are more than I've ever seen him do. Not just in the series, by the way, really in the back half of the season where I thought that he really figured it out. Leans into his strengths, avoids his weaknesses, and played what I think is the best version of him. And that version is really, really useful. So to me, he's a great story. And if you ask me about how far can they go, they're as physical as anyone in the NBA. And the playoffs, they're allowing a lot of physicality this year. If they can get away with that physicality, if things don't change up and we start getting these tic-tac regular season fouls that I absolutely hate, if they're allowed to play physical, I think they're going to shut down every team that relies on perimeter play because they have the guys to do it. And then on the offensive end, they have an identity that's not explosive. But if you can make it a tough game, 105-point game, I give them great odds against anybody.
You could argue that this was the biggest test that they had to face in the playoffs, just because if they got, everybody went in saying Lakers in 5, Lakers in 6, because you looked at the matchup and they can go small and play Gobert off the court. And now that thing is off the table now. And it's not to say that the other teams that they are going to face, like obviously those teams are probably better, even though I think it might be, I mean, you could argue whether or not the Warriors or the Rockets are better than the Lakers. I think that's a fair argument to be made. But then if you make the Western Conference Finals, it's a different story. But this, I think, just proved a lot of things in terms of what the Timberwolves can do. Versus, it just always felt like we were so focused on what they can't do.
Yeah.
And I get it because, they trade Cat before training camp and everybody's like, oh, you did it for money and whatever. And yeah, obviously they did it for money. But I think there was also a vision in trading for Julius Randle there too. It was so evident in last year's playoffs. They just didn't have another shot creator when Anthony Edwards was off the floor. And their offense just went nowhere when Ant was resting. And, Julius Randle is not as good of a player as Karl-Anthony Towns, but he's a much better shot creator than Karl-Anthony Towns. He's just a guy who could just do stuff with the ball in his hands. And then you also add Dante DiVincenzo to the mix as another ball handler. And you look at the guys they drafted, they moved up for Rob Dillingham. Those guys aren't playing right now, but there was obviously a need that they wanted to address there. And it was rough to start the year. And I do think it coalesced. And I'm glad you mentioned how Julius Randle had played better towards the end of the season. And there was a point where I got on here and I'm like, I'm not ruling Minnesota out. And this is probably 2 months before the end of the season. I'm not ruling Minnesota out to make a run. And it kind of felt a little crazy. I think they were literally in the play-in mix at the time. And I'm like, there's something going on here. It feels like they're starting to figure things out. And this is the team that's kind of peaking at the exact right moment when you would want to peak. And that's sort of what this Timberwolves team is doing.
And I don't even know if it's just peaking, although you are absolutely right that they were peaking, figured it out as the year went on and closed the year strong. It's, to me, more about how many problems can you solve and how big of a problem do you create for other teams that can't be solved. And I think as this playoffs goes on, maybe not in the next round, because depending on who they face, really either of the two teams, they have glaring weaknesses that I think Minnesota might be able to exploit with their size. That's their advantage.
Yep.
But if you go further, if you go to the conference finals or the finals, I do think that Minnesota's weaknesses will be exploited a little bit more. And so when you said this was the biggest test, I would disagree with that, because I think part of the story of these playoffs and how they played out, the Lakers are just overrated. And it's every single year this happens.
Yep.
They were obviously an incredibly flawed team. The success in February and March, good job. Impressive. You made the trade and had some big high-profile wins. But I think it was obvious that their roster had significant limitations that could be exploited, and we saw that in the series. But Minnesota is good at exploiting those. And so when you find weak teams, they're going to look dominant, as they did in this series. But when you get to an Oklahoma City, maybe even a Denver, who they faced and went 7 games last year, I think that they're not going to be able to pick at just one thing on those teams over and over again the way that they were for the Lakers.
Yeah, and I think when you look at a team like Denver or the Thunder, not really the Clippers, but you know what you're getting from Jokic every single night. You know what you're getting from SGA every single night. By the conference finals, potentially, we'll see if we know what we're getting from Kawhi every single night. Health is still, a worthwhile consideration there. If there's a hole in Anthony Edwards' game, it's that sometimes he could be a little streaky as a scorer, right? And he's not going to be able to afford a 13-point game on 15 shots kind of game. That's just going to be a loss against Denver or against Oklahoma City.
And not just him, man. The 3-point shooting from the team last game,
unless they do that.
It's a credit to them that they won while missing more threes than any team has ever missed in a win.
Right.
That's a credit to them. But at the same time, that is one of the concerns, right? Like, you're going to get 2 on Anthony Edwards. You're going to release it to Randall. If the team collapses, you're going to have open shots. But if those open shots are for Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jaden McDaniels, even Naz Reid to some extent, I expect those guys to make them more often than not, because I think they're good at it. But if you get into a game 6-7 and it becomes 0-sum, would I be surprised if they had another 7 for 40 night? Not really, because their shooters are sort of in that category. So that's, to me, you're right about Anthony Edwards, though. I think he's less streaky. All perimeter scorers are streaky. Steph Curry's streaky,
Fair.
More streaky than a big guy. But I think it's more their others are. Oklahoma City has the same problem, by the way. They make their shots more often than not, but they are susceptible to these really outlier shooting nights. And when you get to game 6, game 7, all it takes is one of those before you start to question if what you're doing is right.
How many movies would you have had to guess before you guessed Matilda as Anthony Edwards' favorite movie?
It's a great question. I would not have guessed it. I don't think you could have given me the full
1,000.
list. Yeah. At least 1,000. He's hilarious, man.
I love this guy. I love that guy so much. Real quick on the Lakers. Obviously, they need a center. Are they a center away? Do you think that there's more stuff that they need to figure out? Obviously, you want to get, Luka was talking about this after the post game, how, it took him and Kyrie a training camp and a preseason to really figure out how to play with each other. And we saw the results of that. They went to an NBA Finals. Is it as simple as time with Luka and LeBron, add a center or two to this roster, and then this team could be competing for a Western Conference Finals? Or do you think there's more that they need to figure out?
I think there's more than they need to figure out, but your question is almost a roster construction one. And I do think that you can find a good rim rolling center this offseason. You could find one. I don't think you're going to find a great one, but you can find a good one, and Luka's going to make them great. People thought Jackson Hayes was going to become great, and he had these big games in the regular season, and I always felt like, come on, guys. Like, it's going to have to be a player better than that, and probably some depth at that position as well.
Yeah.
But so that plugs a hole. That makes their team make sense, logical sense. But as impressed as I was with Minnesota in this series, I was equally unimpressed with the Lakers and the soul of this team. That was not a team that had a lot of pride or a lot of fight. And they're in a weird spot, man. You have LeBron still hanging around, still playing good, not great basketball, especially when you got to the playoffs. He was great in the regular season, but you can kind of see the limitations of his age when the intensity ramps up like it does in the playoffs. But him, I have no idea. He did not look to me like a guy that could smell a championship on the horizon.
Right?
Luka Doncic is not in the shape of a guy that seems like he's in the prime of his career and recognizes the importance of this moment. So there's a little soul searching, I think, that
it
has
looked
to
like
happen.
they had already given up in the first quarter. And then Minnesota goes a little cold. They get a little hot. They start making shots. Hachimura, these guys, and they get back into the game. And it felt like they were almost forced to play out the string of the game when they didn't want to. They're like, we kind of shot ourselves back into this game. I guess we just kind of had to play this out. But they looked like they had quit early on.
Well, you covered two teams that give you a lot of insight to what it takes to win: the Golden State Warriors and the Miami Heat, in eras where they were making finals runs. Both of those teams were talented.
Mm-hmm.
The Miami Heat maybe less so, but they were tougher than everyone. Golden State, I really believe, is one of the tougher teams, especially during the run. Miami, there's no question that they won a lot of series where they were the less talented team because they were tough, they were connected, and they had this will that was like, we're not going to die. You have to kill us, and you have to kill us over and over and over again. I don't know that the Lakers, what I saw there, and I know this is 1 year, it'll be a different team, but they don't give me confidence that it's going to be like, oh, that's a team that's hard to kill. They looked like they were ready to die. And
even there was no death rattle.
There's no
just
death rattle from them. And so you look at that and say, okay, that was this year, but next year, what changes in that department? Is Luka a guy that's going to be like, no, we are not losing. We are a team that you have to kill and kill over and over again.
Well, let's just also say what happened. JJ Redick got out coached.
Yeah.
And I thought he coached a terrible series and he got really defensive. And you even have Reggie Miller on the broadcast talking about how he had to calm JJ Redick down before the game. Insane. How bad does it have to be for Reggie Miller to say anything on a broadcast? It's that to me was I was like, oh, JJ Redick it's his first year, and I want to get, and he did a lot of good things for the Lakers too, and he did instill a degree of belief that wasn't there before, and it was a weird year where you're sending out Anthony Davis, you're bringing in Luka Doncic. Like, I understand, and I want to be empathetic to all of that. He might be a little bit of a front runner coach. And it's really easy to be a front runner coach in the NBA when things are going right. But I look at guys like you mentioned the two teams that I have experience covering: Steve Kerr, Eric Spoelstra. They're still great coaches when their team stinks.
Yeah,
and I think that's the mark of an actually great coach. Is, hey, when it's not going awesome for you, are you still accomplishing something, and are you still something greater than the sum of your parts? And I don't know. You can't say that JJ Redick created something greater than the sum of its parts with this Lakers team.
Well, I think one of the most important things a coach does is establish an identity, and that identity is often some aspect of a coach's personality. Sometimes not even intentionally. It's just like, hey, leadership. What no matter what, if it's a corporate structure or a team, leadership sets the tone directly and indirectly for the personality of the organization. I think if you look at Spoelstra, no nonsense, very technically sound. Well, the Heat are going to execute. That if they're going to win, it's going to be because they execute at a high level and everybody kind of works hard. Ime Udoka, guy's always looking for a fight. He's talking to players. He's like always ready. Well, guess what? That Rockets team always ready for a fight.
They're always fighting.
Sometimes literally so. But they take on his personality, and I think with JJ Redick, not to be the obvious point or to go too hard in the paint on this, he's a little smug. He's a little entitled almost. He's a little I think very sharp. I don't think you can question his basketball acumen. Coaching is tough. He'll learn from this. He'll get better. But when he freaks out at a reporter so bad that Reggie Miller has to talk to him, you go, is this part of the personality your team is taking on, this weird entitlement and irritability? And to be honest, that's what they looked like, a little entitled and a little irritable in ways that were not productive.
Between him and Luka, man. I mean, the way that Luka talks to every referee, there is a level of entitlement, and that's hard. That's really hard to kind of exercise from your whole kind of deal. I don't know. It's interesting. I would love to see what happens. They are going from, if they add a center, 0 center to, I don't know, an average center. Let's say, that is still a pretty big leap from going to 0 centers who could play in a playoff series to maybe 1 or 2. And I think that could plug a lot of holes. And as long as you have Luka and LeBron, you're going to say that team has a chance. But I agree with you. I think there's a little bit of soul searching that this team needs to do and some reflection. Look, JJ Redick, it was his first year coaching.
Yeah.
I would agree with the adjectives you used. This might have been a little humbling for him. All right, I want to move on. Game 6, Nuggets Clippers tonight. Nuggets are up 3-2 with the game in LA. I picked Nuggets in 7. That I was a little scared after the first couple of games. Not gonna lie, I was like, that might not have been a good prediction. Now I'm feeling pretty good. Jamal Murray, I called him the biggest X factor in the playoffs. What a game from him in Game 5. What are you looking for, or expecting from tonight's game?
Well, the first thing I'm looking for is just how do the Clippers respond? Because I thought their response, Game 4 was a close one. Comes down to maybe the closest game in NBA history. Came down to 1/24th of a second, and Denver gets the win. And so you look at that and go, okay, Game 5 is going to be a battle of wills between two teams, even in a series. It was not that. Denver dominated, and the Clippers were a little spineless in it, in a way that was a little surprising, and James Harden was in particular. So now the question goes, what happened in that game that caused that? And is there something where the Clippers have a little more quit in them than we would think? And maybe we shouldn't be surprised. On the other hand, every game, and David Adelman has been preaching this, and I love this talking point because I think it's very true. We look at games as an extension of the previous one. Like we're picking up where we left off, but it's not true. Every game is its own story, its own personality, its own texture. So that's first thing I'm looking for is just, does this game have a different personality, or is it a bit of an extension of games 4 and 5 where Denver had 22-point leads in both of them? I don't know the answer to that, but that to me has more to do with the Clippers and how they respond to what Denver has done over the last 2 games than it does anything Denver's doing. If the Clippers are not up for it, if they don't have that fight, Denver will end this tonight on the road.
Another thing I'm watching for, you're absolutely right. Another thing I'm watching for is Kawhi. The first couple of games of this series were like, oh my God, Kawhi is back. What just happened? And Charles Barkley's on TNT talking about, like, he's never seen this before, a guy who can just not play for so long and then just come back and look at it like he was at his peak powers. And I thought it was a really good observation. But the last 3 games, he's not been bad, but it hasn't been to that degree of those first couple of games. The first 2 games, he's averaging 30.5 points on 70% shooting, which is probably an impossible standard to hold anybody to. But 30.5 points on 70% shooting, 4.5 rebounds, 2.5 steals per game. In the last 3 games, 21.7 points per game shooting, so about 9 points difference. 46% shooting, which is still pretty good, but not obviously great. And 1 steal per game. So the rebounding is amped up as they've gone a little bit smaller here and there, but I don't know. It's just not the same Kawhi. And I'm not saying he's doing the thing that he always does, which is like flash in the pan, then he gets hurt. And I'm not saying that he's injured or something, but he just doesn't look the same as he did or as aggressive as he did in the first couple of games. He can come out tonight and completely I would not be surprised if he had another, masterclass performance, but it's just, I bring up this just to say they kind of need that from him. And I think it's fair to wonder whether or not he has more of that left.
So you brought up Kawhi, but I'm going to address Harden and Kawhi because I think they're connected here in that Denver cannot guard Kawhi Leonard. So how do they stop him? They're going to have to overload and force him out of his spots, send timely doubles and different things. And the way you beat that, obviously, is getting the ball out of your hands. We just talked about how he's good, not great at that. And Denver is living with it because they have non-shooters on their roster, namely and Chris Dunn, but to some extent, Derek Jones Jr. and a handful of other guys. So Denver is kind of, hey, you're compromised in ways that you probably didn't feel in the regular season, but now give Chris Dunn 10 threes a game. Like, it's not how you want to win, but we're going to make you do it. And as the series goes on, Dunn has been less and less reliable there. So then you have James Harden, who it's like, okay, well, if they're going to overload on that guy, we have another guy. What Denver has done over the last few games, they did it all series long, but they've really perfected it over these last 2 games, is they are making James Harden work harder than he ever has in his entire life. He's in every single action, and not just let's bring him up and run pick and roll or let's throw it into the post and get yoked. They're running his guy around screens, bringing him out on the perimeter, making him go down low and box out, making him guard cuts. And now he is making mental mistakes. He's making will mistakes. Like, how hard is he working on the defensive end? I don't think that he's necessarily like, I'm going to give it my all there, but he's giving enough. Denver's forcing him enough that he is now tired. He's playing like an exhausted old man over these last 2 games. So Kawhi will send doubles, dare you to throw it to Chris Dunn. Harden, too tired to dominate in the ways that you need. We'll see if that holds. But right now, this is one of the reasons I have confidence in Denver going into tonight. Anything can happen. But I just look at it and I say, Harden is the key. Kawhi, they're going to be able to limit him, I think, with these double teams. Harden now has an opportunity he should relish in, but he just looks too tired and not motivated to get it done.
Or do they get a big Norm Powell game or a big Bogdan Bogdanovic game? And those guys have been a little up and down this series. Like, to your point, you kind of need Harden to be that rock. And if he's not going to be that, it's pretty tough. I want to go back to the Chris Dunn point because it's such a good one. That single adjustment almost changed the entire tone of this series. Because they were just guarding him like any other player the first couple of games. And then they were essentially just going to single team Kawhi and just say, you know what, if he beats us, he beats us. And then he did. And they were like, all right, well, that didn't work. And then, Alman deserves credit for making the coaching adjustment. He says, we're going to make sure that we're doubling him. And it's going to be really helpful when Chris Dunn is on the floor because we're just not going to guard him. Right. We're going to have his man roam. And we're going to do that. And the entire tenor of the series kind of changed after that. And now I'm looking at Ty Lue. It's like, all right, dude, it's do or die. You're known as this, and rightfully so, this great playoff coach. Like, what's the adjustment? Is he going to start the game without Chris Dunn? Maybe he does that. I don't know, but he tends to really like Chris Dunn. I'm curious to see what the adjustment is because I'm expecting something tonight.
Well, here's what's so interesting about this series. Denver is not very deep, but I think their 5-man starting lineup can cover all bases. Like, that lineup really works together. The Clippers are very deep, but what we're learning is they don't have a single 5-man lineup they can throw out there that covers all. So Chris Dunn, incredibly disrupted defensively, on ball, but also off ball. When Yoke's in the post, he's like this free safety getting interceptions everywhere. So he's incredibly effective, but now your offense is compromised because Denver's not guarding him. They're running zones, they're overloading. If you remember the first play of Game 5, Denver just didn't guard Chris Dunn. And it was almost like every team likes to get into their offense and run a set just to get going. And it's like, no, Chris Dunn's your first shot. Give it to him. He's wide open. You have to throw it to him. And they're like, ha. And he bricks it. So they have to say, okay, well, if we take Dunn off, let's put in Bogdanovic or one of these other guys. Well, now your defense isn't nearly as good. And now there's a mark on the floor that Denver can attack. And when there's a mark on the floor and Jokic is on the floor, they're going to find him and they're going to attack him and they're going to score. So the Clippers, for all their depth, they have 9 guys that are all playable, but they don't have any combination of 5 that doesn't have a weakness Denver has sort of figured out.
It's another reminder to not overreact to the first 2 home games of a series. It's another reminder for all the playoffs above all else is about problem solving.
Yep.
And Denver has solved more problems as this series has gone on. Even if the Clippers, you could argue, presented more problems to start the series than the Nuggets presented the Clippers. The Nuggets solved those problems and then introduced new problems for their opponent. And I don't know. There's still potentially 2 games left, so I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here. But
for sure.
All right. When you and I hosted Locked On NBA together, we used to do a countdown segment every Friday.
We got one?
I want to bring it back today.
Let's go.
I want to bring it back. Let's go. There is a lot of speculation about Giannis's future in Milwaukee right now. So I came up, Adam, with my top 5 favorite / craziest Giannis trades.
Man, this is perfect. I'm so into it.
A couple honorable mentions, as we do.
Yeah.
I have to include Miami.
Can you just throw Denver in there just for old time's sake?
I tried to figure out Denver. It's like Michael Porter Jr. plus Zeke Naji. Would they say yes?
Yeah. Would they? I don't...
But Giannis and Jokic, I was like, I don't know that it fits, but I would pay. I would move to Denver and buy season tickets just to find out.
I not only do I think it fits, I think it would be one of the craziest duos. I mean, he's basically a super Aaron Gordon.
Right.
So I think it would fit incredibly well. But to your point, what does Denver have to offer?
Miami also has nothing to offer, but I run the show, so I'm including them. It would be like Tyler Hero, Wiggins, Khalil Ware, 3 first-round picks. They're an honorable mention. Obviously, they're my actual favorite spot, but it's not going to happen. One more other honorable mention, a little bit more realistic, Oklahoma City.
So, Nate Jones, who a really good follow, works in the NBA business, and he had a great point about this new CBA. I don't know if it makes sense to do that move.
Right.
They can leave this window open with their big 3 for 10 years with all of the first-round draft picks they have, and that might be the best play. Like, just if you give this, we think the Thunder have a chance to win this year. If you can just keep this level of could win it this year for 10 years, you probably grab 3 or 4. So I don't know if they do that. But
if Milwaukee is forced to trade Giannis, they will call the Thunder.
Of course.
I built out a package. Chet Holmgren.
Okay.
Kaysen Wallace, Nikola Topic, Usman Jang, Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, and then whatever picks. That would be a haul for Milwaukee. But I'm with you. That's why it's an honorable mention. I felt like I had to mention it because the Thunder have been out there.
I
would rather just the Thunder ride this thing out.
If the Thunder flame out this year, say they lose in the next round, Denver goes in and beats them. then I think you have to have the real conversation of like, we love our core, we're a good regular season team, but is this really it?
Exactly.
But anything short of that, I think you're going to look at it and go, even if they just make it to the conference finals, you go, we're so close. Let's just keep this going. All the guys are getting better.
That's exactly what I have in my notes. That's how you know you and I hosted a show together once. Kind of would rather the Thunder write it out with all these guys, but if they lose before the finals, ... maybe question mark?
Maybe.
All right, actual top 5. Ready? This one's going to blow your mind. Number 5, Phoenix.
I knew that was going to be the one. Who are they giving, though? Who are they giving up?
How about this? Giannis and Damian Lillard.
Okay.
Take that contract off our hands.
Yeah.
For Durant, Bradley Beal, and Grayson Allen.
Man, who would you rather have next year, Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal? I'm kidding. Because Dame's out.
Beal at least plays.
Yeah.
And if Durant has one more year left under contract, so if you're Milwaukee, you're like, all right, we kind of have Durant for a year, and then we figure it out. Grayson Allen comes back. It's like we probably shouldn't. I don't know. And then you get, if you're Phoenix, you get a little bit of cap relief by getting rid of Grayson Allen. You get under the tax. I don't know. I think it would be fascinating. But
Phoenix says yes. Milwaukee's, I don't think, says so. But we'll see.
Yeah, they probably say no. It would only be like, hey, we got to stay relevant because we're in Milwaukee. Number 4 is Houston for Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun, and whatever picks. Just Giannis with Ime feels like a good fit.
Yeah,
they're down to fight and get physical. Would the Rockets draw the line at Amen Thompson? I would hope so, but would that be a deal breaker for Milwaukee? Because then you're getting Green and Sengun and some picks. You're like, okay, like a point guard center combo. We can kind of build around that and some draft picks.
I mean, I think you maybe swap even Amen Thompson. Like, Amen Thompson is one of my favorite players. He's by far my favorite player on the Rockets. So this is not a thing where I don't value him. But Giannis and Amen Thompson, first of all, you're never scoring on that duo. Like, just give up trying to score. Just get back on defense. Hopefully you get in the bonus or something. But offensively, the half court would be really tough with those two guys. And they're kind of, Amen Thompson to me is a mini Giannis.
And that's why it's number 4 on my list and not number 1. I think a lot of people are looking at it as a top choice. Number 3 is Dallas for Anthony Davis and 3 first-round picks. So they have the number 11 pick this year, Dallas does, a 2029 pick and a 2031 pick. And I just include them. I just feel so bad for Mavericks fans.
Yeah.
Like, what a rotten season to have the heart and soul of your team and your favorite player just... I was trying to explain this to my wife. I said it would be like trading Dwayne Wade after the 2005 season, right before he won a championship in 2006. That would be what it was. Like, it would be as soon as you realize Nikola Jokic was the truth and being like, we're just going to trade him instead of Nurkic. And
it's the worst. It's the worst.
It's the absolute worst. So I wanted to include him on the list. And then I'm thinking Giannis, Kyrie, Clay, PJ Washington.
Yeah, there's something there. The problem is Kyrie's not back. I mean, I know everybody thinks he's going to be the fastest person ever to return from this injury, but it's still throwing away in some part half of a year of Giannis's prime. Look, I think that's the haul you just said. I think Milwaukee would do, because you said 3 first-round picks and you have Anthony Davis, which you immediately, in my opinion, try to find a home for Anthony Davis and get 3 more first-round picks. Like, let's try to make this like a real just rebuild. So that one's the first one that makes the most sense to me from Milwaukee's standpoint. But Dallas, I just don't know.
San Antonio for, I'm not breaking any news here, for just Devin Vassell, Stephon Castle, Harrison Barnes, whatever picks. It would lead to the Spurs and the Thunder young clashing Titans kind of thing. It would be really cool. I hate that I love it because I really don't want to love it. I'm like, Wembanyama's got his own thing. Let him do it. It's fine. He already got De'Aaron Fox, but it would be sick. It would legitimately be sick.
I mean, San Antonio, it's so easy to build around Wemby and Giannis. That's the easiest lineup ever. I mean, you're going to hold teams to 75 points a game, and you'll figure out the offense. I mean, because it even makes conceptual sense over time. But yes, that lineup would be frightening for the rest of the league.
Do you know who my number 1 is?
Oh, no. Let me think here. I would guess like New York or something, but let's see.
No, boo. We don't need Giannis in New York. Indiana. Number 1, baby. Right. I love it. I stole this idea from Tyler Parker at The Ringer, but he proposed Pascal Siakam, Benedict Mathurin, Ben Shepherd, and whatever picks. Just classic. If you can't beat him, join him. Enemy to a friend. It would be like Dennis Rodman joining the Bulls. All of a sudden, these guys are just at each other's throats, literally at each other's throats for multiple series, and have all this history together, stealing game balls and all this stuff. And now Giannis is actually wearing a Pacers jersey. So you've got the narrative story part, which is just great from a soap opera standpoint, but also Halliburton throwing to Giannis would be pretty sick.
Papa Halliburton might have ruined this one though. You know, I don't know if we're pulling that one off after what
He
happened.
apologized on Twitter. What are you talking about?
Oh, never mind. Then I think we're good. Yeah, call it in.
Adam Mares from DNVR Sports, the All NBA podcast. Thanks so much for joining me, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother.